Good evening, guys. I'm so glad you could join us again for yet another show of Health Up. We are welcoming you once again, even in this era of another lockdown in March 2021. My name is Dr. Sylvia Mwathi, and I'm going to be your host. So looking at what happened last year in March 2020, we saw that people went through lockdown and a lot of people ended up gaining weight, and they are actually in the journey of recovery. But yet again, what has happened is that we have the third wave of COVID. We've again been put on lockdown. People are working from home. Then there's that risk of becoming very sedentary and adding a lot of weight. So on the show today, I felt it was important that we have a show to talk about physical activity and exercising. And we are really blessed because we are having a physiotherapist on the show. So we are joined by Pastor Peter Talam. He's a pastor at Life Church International, a youth pastor, and he's also a physiotherapist working at Nairobi Hospital. I'm going to welcome him, and we're going to have this topic. So kindly stay tuned and don't touch that dial. So welcome, Pastor Peter. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I'd like you to introduce yourself, let the people know what you do, how many years of experience you have, and you could also tell us what physiotherapy entails.
Thank you very much. My name, as you have heard from Dr. Sylvia, is Peter Talam, and I'm born again. Christ is Lord and Savior over my soul.
Yes.
I am also a physiotherapist, practicing physiotherapist, and I work at the Nairobi Hospital. I've been working at the Nairobi Hospital now for 10 years. Wow. Before then, I was working as a physiotherapist in different organizations for 4 years. So totally, I've practiced as a physiotherapist for a total of 14 years.
That's a long time.
And it has been quite a journey,
yes.
and a beautiful journey at that. I am also passionate. Even before we continue the discussion, you said I'm a pastor, and I found a verse that talks about physical activity in the Bible.
All right.
And that is 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8. The Bible says that bodily exercise profits but a little.
Yes.
But godliness has a promise both for life now and in the years to come, or life after.
Yeah.
And so that basically denotes that bodily exercises or physical activity, as we can talk about, is important for any person that is alive today.
Yeah.
And like you have rightly said, many people right now in COVID era and in lockdown have been asked by the organization to work from home. And if they cannot be involved in physical activity, we will be able to see a lot of obesity, even child obesity and stuff like that. And we need to be able to address it through physical activity. Physiotherapy basically is a branch of medicine that uses physical means to rehabilitate, to treat, and to bring people to their normal function as the body processes and the body physiology should be. And so we in other places are called physical therapists because we do use physical means.
Physical means,
to treat, while you, daktari, are dispensing medicine or surgical means for other surgical doctors. For us physios, we dispense physical activity. And we dispense exercise program, and we use physical means to be able to treat our patients.
All right. So before even we move on to other things concerning exercise, when you say physical means, I've realized, like personally, I got a fracture on this finger, and I remember after having it, having a wire placed on it, it became very stiff, and I had to undergo physiotherapy. So what kind of exercises do you normally do for people, and what kind of injuries or what kind of rehabilitation do they have to undergo even as we go to the exercise?
Yes, and thank you for that. And there are several conditions, and each condition has got a prescribed kind of exercise program. And before even we talk about condition, there are those post-management, like the case you have talked about. It's an orthopedic surgical case. Now, with a fracture, you'd want to make sure that you do exercise to ensure that there is sufficient range of motion. You need to do exercises towards building strength. You need to do exercises towards skill and function. Just to pick the example that you have talked about, I would want that joint to move to full range. And so I would help my client or my patient to be able to move that joint to full range. Number two, I will devise exercise program for this particular client to ensure that that finger is strong enough. Finally, I would ensure that there is function towards that arm. And so There are exercises, generally speaking, there are exercises that focuses on range of motion.
Yeah.
And there are exercises that focus on strength building.
Okay.
And there are exercises that focus on skill, particular skill. And
Yes.
so like I've said, there are orthopedic cases that we deal with.
Yes.
There are neurological cases, things like stroke and CVA.
Yes.
There are surgical cases, let's say repairs and ACL repairs, total hip replacement. There are chest-related cases, and we would give exercise program to be able to increase the breathing capacity of this particular patient. And now that we're talking about COVID, we actually we are greatly involved in ensuring that we have good physical activity and deep breathing exercises so that the lung capacity can be able to be expanded enough and to take enough oxygen even in this time and in this era.
Okay, so I think even as we go on, you're going to touch on some of those exercises for the lung, because you know many people are trying to see how they can do that. So let's just move on to our topic for today, because I know physiotherapy covers a lot. We can start by you defining for us what exercise is all about.
Yes, and as we discuss on physical activity and exercises today, I would focus a lot of our discussion towards the Kenya National Physical Activity Action Plan, which is a strategic plan for 2018-2023 that was developed by Kenya in partnership with World Health Organization that gives a guideline on physical activity and gives a guideline on exercise. Perhaps before even I talk about the physical activity and the exercises program, I would briefly mention about this action plan, this action plan on physical activity.
So it's an action plan made by Kenyans? For Kenyans.
For Kenyans,
yes.
But
so that you're not drawing too much from the international.
From the internet and all that.
All right.
And
that's good.
The goal of all this is to have a healthy, a physically active nation and a healthy nation.
Yes.
Because there is a correlation, perhaps we'll talk about that, between physical activity and health. And a healthy nation.
Yes.
And this particular plan looks generally on three major areas. The first one is legislation and policy. That goes into the parliament and stuff like that. Policies around physical activity. Policy and legislation around physical activity. Secondly, creating awareness. And I'm so glad about this program because this program would create a level of awareness create awareness on what physical activity is. And I think the community that we are living in needs to have that awareness on what physical activity is. And finally, creating opportunities. And I would say this, that opportunity is everywhere. Opportunity is everywhere. You do not have to enroll into a gym for you to do physical activity.
That's important, especially now.
Yes.
Gyms might be closed.
And I think I'll mention that. I'll mention that on physical activity. When we talk about physical activity, the first thing that comes into, or exercise, the first thing that comes into the mind of a person is gym. But actually, physical activity and exercises goes way beyond gym. And you do not need to have gym so that you can be able to do physical activity and exercise. Back to your question. I would look at it in two levels. I would start with physical activity because physical activity is the general term. And exercise is a subset of physical activity. Physical activity is any activity, any waking activity, things that you do when you are awake, that involves skeletal muscle and require expenditure of energy. Allow me to explain. When we talk about skeletal muscle, Daktari, you know there are smooth muscles and there are skeletal muscles. Now, skeletal muscles are those muscles that move a joint. They're those muscles that are attached to a bone. There are those muscles that are attached to, you know, the frame, or rather what we call the bone and all that. The skeleton.
When you draw the skeleton, anything muscle attached there.
Any muscle that attached there is a skeletal muscle. So when we say physical activity, is any activity that would involve these skeletal muscles. In other words, it's activities that you would see to a certain degree movement of joints.
Okay.
When skeletal muscles are involved, 90% of those involvement of skeletal muscles, apart from static muscle construction and the rest, you would see joint movement because skeletal muscles are involved.
Yes.
So physical activity, number one, is any activity that you do when you're awake.
Any activity you do when you're awake.
Number two,
so long as you're not sleeping.
So long as you're not sleeping.
Even when you're sitting down.
We will talk about that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that when we talk about sedentary life. So any physical activity that you do when you're awake that involves skeletal muscles. And number two, that involves expenditure of energy.
Okay.
So that's where
sitting down is not giving you now the expenditure of the energy.
The expenditure.
All right.
They say there is a level of energy that you expend when you're sitting,
as opposed to when you're lying down.
When you're lying down.
Yeah.
And this expenditure, when you're at rest, when you're at sitting, is what we call 1 MET. So basically, there is a level of
just little,
but
very little,
but very little.
Yes.
But that is not physical activity that we are talking about. We're talking about where there is movement of joints. So we are talking about things like walking, walking, household chores, you know, you're washing your utensils, you're cooking here. It is physical activity.
Going up the stairs.
Going up the stairs, when you're going to the shop and back, it is physical activity. So this, in a general sense, is what we call physical activity.
I think I get you.
And this is what we need to encourage a lot, that we should have a physically active nation. But exercise, like you have asked, exercise is a subset of physical activity. Now, subset of physical activity that involves, I think our viewers needed to understand that. Exercise involves purposeful, repetitive, planned, and structured exercise program or physical activity that would be beneficial for the heart, cardiorespiratory, and strength or the muscle building. So let me break it down. Let me break it down a little bit. So when we talk about exercise, it should be planned.
It should be planned. I'm hearing 4 words there, 4 key words that I didn't know.
So it should be planned. You cannot say that I'm doing an exercise and it's not planned. Number two, it should be structured. If time allows, we'll talk about those structured kind of exercise program. It's not just anything that you do as a by the way. It should be a structured kind of an exercise plan. Number three, it should be repetitive. And this is where most people we lose it. We do one, and then the next time we are doing it is 1 year down the line. Exercise should be repetitive. It should be planned. It should be repetitive.
You know what I understood with repetitive?
Yes.
Is that like if you're skipping 100, 1, 2.
That's the
like that's repetitive.
It is repetitive.
Or maybe if you're doing the star jumps, you're doing like maybe 10
I like
or
your
50.
Exercise program.
I wish. I wish.
Yes, that is repetitive. So repetitive can be on the short term while you're doing the exercises, and can be on the long term.
On the long time, you're doing it over
reps,
and over
again. So repetitive number one is, like you have said, 10 sit-ups or 10 push-ups.
Yes, yes.
And I think some of us need to take up a challenge of those repetitive movements. And then we say we're doing 20 push-ups.
Yes, yes.
But repetitive also can mean after every day, I'll be doing this particular planned program. Now, these exercises should be geared towards
muscle building.
Muscle building should be geared towards cardiac and respiratory.
Yeah, because we have cardio.
So that's when aerobics comes
in.
And cardiorespiratory comes. So we hear cardio. So cardio basically are those exercises that are geared towards heart and respiratory issues.
Yes.
But there are also exercises planned that are geared towards muscle building.
Like weightlifting.
And there are those exercise programs that are geared towards fat burning and all those kind of things. So all these are the goals of an exercise, and I think we will talk about that when we talk about the benefits of physical activity. But rule of the thumb, repetitive, planned, and structured.
Yes.
And so someone said, you got to make time for exercise.
Yeah.
If you do not make time for exercise, you run a risk of making time for illness.
Okay.
So in other words,
if you don't exercise, then you're making time for going to hospital,
yes,
being on medications, being on bed rest, you know, all those things.
And so that means my exercise program, Daktari, will take time.
Yeah.
It's something that I've got to invest time in.
And what I'm also picking is this, sometimes, as you said, I'm a doctor, so sometimes I'll ask a patient if they have time for exercise, and they'll tell me yes, but when I ask them what they are doing, it's actually really not exercise, because it's not having those 4 characteristics. It's basically physical activity.
It's basically physical activity.
Yeah, so they'll just tell you that, oh, you know, when I go to work, I usually walk for 30 minutes. So it's like, now that's the exercise plan, but it's really not planned. It's because they're going to work and they have to walk. So it's more of like a physical activity.
More of a physical activity.
All right.
And I think our viewers need to understand, yes, at least physical activity is something. You're doing something, you're moving from one point to the other, you're involving your skeletal muscle, but the next level is exercise. Where you have a planned program.
Okay.
You have a target that you need to achieve.
Okay.
You have got goals that you need to achieve.
Okay, so maybe we can move on to those benefits that you're saying. The benefits you wanted to mention, let's just mention and go through. What are the benefits of exercising?
Yes, so benefits of exercise, I will lump them together with physical activity.
Yes.
And I would first talk about what is our major concern.
Yeah.
And this is the issue of fat deposits in the body. I will mention it on risks of sedentary lives. And what happens is, and the nutritionist probably would agree with us, is that when you eat food, you would expend energy when you're doing the physical activity. Now, there are cases whereby you have reserved calories, that you have not used in your physical activity.
Yeah.
And so you would need exercises to be able to burn those calories. And so generally, if I'm to talk about the benefits of physical activity, I would talk about that as one of them. And this one is, it reduces the risk of heart diseases, heart conditions. And you bear me witness that heart condition results mostly because of accumulation of fats in the blood vessels, creating what we call the atherosclerosis, and causing, apart from the heart condition, causes increase in hypertension. So number one benefit is the reduction of risk of heart condition and reduction of cases of hypertension. Study was done that last year in Kenya, cases of hypertension, cardiac diseases, and stroke were 15,000. You know, deaths related to. Deaths related to these three were 15,000. Corona was 2,200 and something.
I actually saw that, yes.
So
it was way, it was not even top 10.
It was not even
top 10. But anyway,
10.
they are giving it a lot of, you know,
so you can imagine
time.
that deaths resulting from heart condition, deaths resulting from hypertension, deaths resulting from stroke is up to, that will be 8 times more than cases that we are having in Corona. But exercise can help prevent this heart conditions, can help prevent these hypertension cases, can, number 2, normalize your blood pressure. And which is important. It is said that 1 out of 5 are the ones who know their blood pressure issues. And 4 might be having an issue with the blood pressure, but
they have no idea. And we touched that, at least for those viewers, go look for our topic on hypertension.
Yes. So exercise would help to normalize issues on hypertension and be able to reduce your BPs and all that and normalize it. So that is the benefit number 2. Benefit number 3 that I would talk about is quite interesting. And this one is reduction in anxiety and depression.
Oh, really?
You would be surprised to note that one of the recommendations by the psychiatrists on issues of depression and anxiety, one of the management, to use a medical term, of this, apart from the medications that are giving, is an exercise regime. So exercises help.
Because it removes your mind from thinking about the stressor.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it helps to reduce anxiety. It helps to reduce anxiety and cases of depression. That unfortunately, Daktari, we are having a lot of issues on anxiety. We've got a lot of issues in depression currently. That perhaps we need a more physically active nation. We need a more physical active and exercise-driven community. So physical activity helps to reduce cases of anxiety and cases of depression, if you may. The other benefit of physical activity is reduction of type 2 DM, diabetes mellitus. Why is it important? Because physical activity and exercise, I hope when I use the two, you know the difference, or our viewers do know the difference. Exercises will burn energy. And when you do a physical activity, you will be able to consume the sugars in the blood, so that you can be able to normalize your nini. Equally, if you do a long-term exercise, and that is where my interest is today, and exercises that would go to the levels of burning fats, as opposed to exercise programs that just burn the blood sugars and all those kind of things. It would help to normalize your blood sugars. And that's another thing that is of concern, issues of diabetes that needs to be addressed. In a nutshell, those are major ones. The other ones I'll mention in passing. Exercise improves strength, muscle strength, and the tones. We are in the generation whereby people comes and tells you that I want to tone my muscle, or I want to build my muscle, I want to strengthen my muscle. And with muscle, this is where metabolism happens. So you need to be able to exercise so that your muscles can be able to be strong enough to be able to. It's the engine where the metabolism is being burned. So it benefits on the muscles. The other one, it improves your lung capacity and your oxygen intake. It improves your bone density. So in a nutshell, there are so many benefits that you can look at regarding
those are the ones you mentioned
physical
for now.
activities.
Right, that's awesome. I am liking this topic, and I hope our viewers are also liking this topic. The benefits are really, really many. So I want us to go on a short break. When we come back, we are going to continue touching on the importance and how we can engage ourselves in physical activity or exercise, even during this time of COVID. We are going to be very practical. Keep on listening and watching Health Up. Thank you.
Thank you so much.